In today's video, we'll be talking about 5 albums released in the year 1993. These are what I would call underrated albums that I don't really see other channels talking about too much. So I divide the video into chapters. Feel free to skip ahead to the band you want to hear about. So let me start with the first one. So the first band I want to talk about is called Cathedral, and the album is called the Ethereal Mirror. So this is their second album, and Cathedral is a band from England. They released this album in May of 1993 through Eric Records, and they are a doom metal band. They sound a lot like early Black Sabbath. They were kind of popular in the 90s, and this was their kind of biggest album, I guess. They had a few minor hits. So, for example, one song, Ride, really great chugging guitar groove, and these vocals kind of remind me of like that crust punk. Another song, Midnight Mountain, more of a hard rock song with these guitar riffs and the drums, and they kind of like alternate going back and forth. That one's a really great song. And then they have some like slower, like doomier stuff. So for example, the song Fountain of Innocence, very reminiscent of early 70s Black Sabbath. They use like these like vocal effects similar to Planet Caravan from the Black Sabbath Paranoid album. And overall a great album, just very doomy, just this old school, like slow, heavy, plodding riffs. So just a really great album. Next is Fight with War of Words. This is a band started by Rob Halford. He left Judas Priest. And he took Scott Travis with him on drums. They recruited 3 more members and they started a new band. And this is like a mixture between like Judas Priest, like Painkiller Judas Priest, and like Pantera. Like heavy groove, like thrash. This is a really great album. So the album opens with Into the Pit. Now this song's a thrasher. Now I remember this, I saw this band live at a small venue in Poughkeepsie, New York called The Chance. I remember like being 22 years old, I was in a mosh pit. The next day I was completely sore. Just good times. I can't really go in the mosh pit anymore at my age, but it was fun. But lots of great songs here. So they have lots of heavy, thrashy stuff. And they also have some like other like slower, doomier stuff. So for example, like Life in Black, that was like a little slower. And then they have like a ballad called For All Eternity, which is kind of similar to like a typical like a Judas Priest ballad, something that could have appeared on one of their like earlier like 70s or 80s albums. And then the song Little Crazy, which is the typical like 90s thing to do with the acoustic guitars playing like these like heavier riffs and like a southern rock sound mixed with some thrash and some groove. So just a great, awesome album. This band only released like 2 albums in their career, but this is really great. Next is Saigon Kick with Water. So this is the 3rd album by Saigon Kick, released on September 28th, 1993. On this album, I used to listen to it a lot because I remember finding this in a bargain bin at one time. It was sometime around like 1998. I used to listen to it all the time on my Walkman when I was at work. And they have lots of different styles. So Saigon Kick in general, they were like a glam metal band, but they weren't really glam. They were like heavier. They had these Beatles harmonies, lots of heavy riffs. But on this album, they explored like lots of different styles. So for example, the first song is called One Step Closer. And when I really re-listened to this album, I noticed that it sounded, or the Linkin Park song of the same name sounded a lot like this, like the chorus was very similar. And this album actually came out about 7 years before Linkin Park. Then they have a cover of David Bowie's Space Oddity, and that was actually the first time I heard this song. Wasn't familiar with the original David Bowie song at that time, and I kind of fell in love with this song. It's just really great. It's just a really great rendition. They really did it very well. They have other stuff. They have a song called I Love You, really sappy, poppy keyboard ballad, but that one's good. And they just cover so many different styles. I would have to do like a full review of this and like a full video just to go track by track, just to talk about all like the different things they do on this album. But for the purpose of this video, that's all I'm going to talk about. So let me move on to the next one, which is the band is Living Colour and the album is Stain. And this is their 3rd album, released March 2nd, 1993 through Epic Records. This is a heavy album. I used to listen to it all the time when it came out. Again, another one, they go through lots of different styles. So they open the song with a track called Go Away. just basically just like in your face, heavy thrash metal. Then they do a song like Ignorance is Bliss. I think that was a single. That was something more like their classic Living Color sound, similar to what they did on their debut album Vivid. They have a song called Leave It Alone. That was one of the singles. That was nice, cool guitar work and mixing like that hard rock and funk. They have a song that was called Bi, about being bisexual, and that song was like really ahead of the time. Keep in mind it was 1993, and that was something that was like not really like things that what people were openly speaking about at that time. But that was a good song anyway. And the song Mind Your Own Business, really cool. That one has like tempo changes where they kind of start like a normal pace and they get like really fast. That was pretty cool. They have a song called Nothingness. It's more atmospheric ballad with all these sound textures, and that one's cool. Then another song called This Little Pig, more like experimental noise rock, some kind of like grungy sounds, and some like guitar shredding, which reminded me of like Van Halen. So lots of heavy stuff and lots of a little more experimental stuff. So this is a great album. One of my favorites. I actually haven't listened to their other albums. I know they continue to put out albums afterwards. I need to get on that and check it out. Vince Neil, a solo album it's called Exposed. Now this is his solo album, his first solo album after leaving the Motley Crue in 1992. So released on April 27, 1993 through Warner Brothers, produced by Ron Nevison. So this is another album I found in a bargain bin. Actually the same day I bought that Saigon Kick Water album. And another one I just loved. I listen to it all the time. This is like the proper follow-up to Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood. Like this is what like the band like should have sounded like. It's very similar to Motley Crue in the late 80s. So this was right before the self-titled Motley Crue album with John Corabi came out. That's an album I like a lot. That one's very different, but this sounded more like Crue than like the real Crue. So lots of great songs. We got Look Her in the Eyes, just a fast-paced rocker. Sister of Pain, more of like a groovy blues rock song, similar to something like from Girls, Girls, Girls or Theater of Pain. Fine, Fine Wine is a classic like sleaze metal, just cool bass intro, lots of hard rocking riffs. You got a power ballad called Can't Change Me. This one starts with some classical acoustic guitar, and this is probably like a better ballad than a typical Motley Crue ballad. It's a really good song. And they have a single called You're Invited But Your Friend Can't Come. Just a very high energy, very fun glam metal rocker with a catchy chorus. But all in all, just an underrated album. Like I've never really seen other channels talk about this. It's just something that doesn't get talked about a lot. So that is all. Next week I'll be back with 1994. It's just I will be continuing my series throughout December with one video a week. So that is all. Thanks for watching. See you in the next